Actually, I'd like this discussion and to see what say happens with them. Yeah, well, you see how they start and to develop. The interesting thing is the outline of the speaker, the variety of the speaker. That's something which I think is quite interesting. It's going to be a challenge to reach that level next time again. The second thing is, what I like a lot is the type of people which are here. He's asking all the time these questions. He's a technology scout for a huge company who tries to identify technology. You have to talk to him. And, there's another one sitting over there. There's another Dutchman sitting over there. So the variety of the people here, architects, engineers, students, but also, say, technologists, which are taking this. That's something which I really like. Several of them said lots of problems, things complicated, too short time to get things done. So we saw a lot of concrete collapsing. We had difficulties with getting the bricks done. We saw ugly surfaces. I think you're quite right with your approach of, say, using this surface design as being something important. That's interesting to see. Interesting. You look at me like you asked me to do this.
Keep on.
Cut. The first 3D printer was brought to me to a very good friend, Marcel Bido. Some of you know him, 2006. And we were using it and it felt like, oh, this is something really interesting. And then we moved into printing aluminium. We wanted to have a facade note, you remember that, facade note being printed. And we started talking to these people and they started laughing and saying, aluminium, never going to be printed, forget it. Well, we continued and 2-3 years later, the printer was there. So it's a pull and push question. So if you ask something, you may get something. And that's something which I'm not finished. Okay. And so this was 2006. We did the first rapid book in 2009. The next one in, 2007 was the first one. And the one we did was 2010. And say this is a 10 years period where you start with something. And that's an interesting experience. Then you start with something, and at a certain point it comes to a point that people see now, they start believing that this could work. Young companies start to develop, they start their business, we get the first objects done, give it another 10 years time, and then this is something which is common. Not at all places, and not commodity, but common. That's, say, the next 10 years. That's something which is interesting. It's also nice, again, to see this community of this different people. Last time, we had one of the architects at the end saying, this is a super nice, interesting show. You remember him? The one from Freaks. And he said, you have a lot of solutions, but what's the question? I like that one a lot, and we see now the question developing. Your art object, you're flying into it on a different angle. It's not only technical, it also has a different level of pain. The bridge, the same. And that gives a pull situation. We have this push by the young ones developing it, and we have now getting the pull by people using it. And that's something which I really like in architecture, design, in art, refurbishment, the windowsill, very nice to see. I'm not finished. I'm going to go for the thanks. So now you start.
Yeah, something that...
This is his paper.
Something that became, or that I recognize today, as you just mentioned, in 2006, you suddenly had a 3D printer on the table and you were fascinated.
Well, it was a big one.
Or
can do small things.
Whatever. What we saw today is that the innovation and the driving force comes out of the discipline. It's not that machines are coming and architects and engineers are using them, but the disciplines that are interested in the technologies develop them further or invent them. And I think this is something that is very unique in the community, and it kind of led to an explosion. Theo Saleh was showing all the concrete 3D printing research that get more and more year by year. And that is not something that comes from outside, but it's architecture. We saw a lot of people who studied architecture, and then when they graduated, they did not went into an architectural office, but they started a company. Yeah? And I think this is something that really pushes a lot. I like to hear Thomas Fehler was saying, we learned something about our material. They used this material for so many years and decades, and suddenly by changing the perspective a little bit or the process, they learn something new. And this is maybe also changing their more conventional industrial production process. And the other thing that became very obvious is that this is nothing that relates to a robot or a 3D printer only, but if we want to have innovation, then we need obviously larger teams, material scientists, roboticists, mechanical engineers, but also designers and tool makers for design tools that allow designers to design things that are worth to be 3D printed. So it's the entire chain from the first idea to the materialization. This is what I said in the morning already, but we could see in the collection of the presentations that exactly this is happening in different institutions, in industry, in practice.
This is the last sign-off piece on text. So now I continue. Thanks to all speakers. Thank you. Applause.
Thank you.
Thanks to the team, especially Bastian and Chris, who really pushed it a lot in the last half year and made this very nice booklet. Applause. Thanks to Formnext to support us. Thanks to PMP, as you already mentioned, to support us as well. Finance is always an issue. You have to get all these kind of things done. Thanks for being able to do an exhibition. And now I have a director's comment from you. We don't start talking here. We all go to the exhibition.
Which is 2 floors down.
We may lose 20% of you, but the rest will love it. So
2 floors down, F68.
Yeah, here we go. Bye-bye.